The studio of The View hummed with its familiar pre-show electricity, but even in the chatter and rustle of papers there was an undercurrent, a tension so subtle most people missed it, but not Joy Behar. She'd been doing live television long enough to know when something was off, and today, something most certainly was. The producers were moving with a frantic edge, whispering in huddles, darting glances toward the stage entrance every few seconds. Joy watched them over the rim of her mug, her eyes narrowing. She wasn't in the mood for surprises. Robert Irwin, the day's guest, was already waiting backstage, microphone clipped to his shirt, his signature bright smile ready to go. Joy liked Robert, really, she did. She'd always had a soft spot for the Irwin family, passionate, earnest, almost impossibly wholesome. But something about the way the producers kept fussing over him made her suspicious. Her instincts prickled. Either someone had told Robert something she didn't know, or he was bringing something she wasn't prepared for. The countdown hit 10, then 5, then the booming live sign lit up overhead. The audience erupted into applause as the hosts settled into their seats. Joy plastered on her practiced smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Whoopi kicked things off with the usual banter. Sunny chimed in with a joke that landed better than expected, and for a moment everything seemed normal. But then Whoopi leaned in, her tone shifting just slightly as she said, "We've got a special guest joining us today. You know him, you love him, Robert Irwin." The audience roared with delight. Robert jogged out with that unshakable enthusiasm, waving, beaming, the very picture of warmth. He hugged Whoopi, shook hands with Sunny, and then turned to Joy with a bright, earnest look. "Joy," he said with a huge smile, "I've been looking forward to talking with you." That line, it didn't sit right. It wasn't rehearsed, nor was it casual. It felt pointed. Joy raised an eyebrow as Robert took his seat. "Oh, have you now?" she replied, voice light but edged with skepticism. The interview began harmlessly. Robert talked about wildlife conservation, new projects at the Australia Zoo, rescued animals, climate change. Joy nodded politely, interjecting with the occasional quip, but something about Robert's pacing felt deliberate. Too deliberate. He kept glancing her way, studying her reactions, as if waiting, planning. Then he shifted in his chair, leaning forward slightly. "Joy," he said, with a warm but serious tone that set her on alert. "I actually wanted to speak with you about something specific." There it was. The air tightened. Joy blinked once, slowly. "With me? About what?" Robert clasped his hands. "About comments you've made on the show in recent months, about wildlife, conservation, and, well, my family." The audience murmured. Joy straightened. She hadn't expected that. Sunny cut in gently. "Robert, are you referring to?" He nodded. "Yes, some of Joy's comments about animal conservation being performative, or naive." Joy felt heat rise to her face, not embarrassment, but anger. She remembered the comments. They were part of a broader debate, not personal attacks. But Robert clearly hadn't taken them that way. "Look," Joy said, forcing a calm she didn't quite feel, "I'm a comedian and a commentator. I make points. I challenge ideas. That's what we do on this show." Robert nodded politely, but his eyes were unwavering. "Of course, and I respect that, but I think sometimes the work my family does gets dismissed too easily. My father died doing what he loved, trying to make this world safer for animals and for us. I just think it deserves more than being called cute environmentalism." The audience gasped. Joy's eyes widened. She hadn't realized he'd heard that exact quote. Producers in the wings stiffened. Whoopi shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Joy took a breath. "Robert, that wasn't meant as an attack on your father or your family. It was commentary on, but it matters," he said gently, though the firmness in his tone cut sharper than a shout. "Words matter, especially coming from voices like yours." The audience applauded, clearly siding with him. Joy's jaw tightened. She had spent decades being the outspoken one, the sharp one, the one who wasn't afraid to push back. But being scolded, on live television, by someone half her age was another thing entirely. "All right," Joy said, crossing her arms. "If we're talking about words mattering, let's talk honestly. I've criticized the romanticizing of dangerous animal encounters. That's not personal. That's about promoting safety. But suddenly it's some big moral moment. Come on." Robert didn't flinch. "It is personal to me. Because my platform, and yours, has the power to change how people treat animals, how they think about conservation, how they protect the planet. When you shrug off what we do as theatrics, people listen to that too." Joy opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head. So what? You came here to lecture me. If that's how it feels, Robert said, maybe the message needed to be stronger. The audience erupted again. Whoopi tried to steer things back to neutral territory, but the moment had already cracked open. Joy felt cornered, and Joy Behar did not do well when cornered. She leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing. You know, Robert, it's easy to preach when you grew up in a family empire built around animals and adoration. Some of us have to ask harder questions. That's our job. That's my job. And mine, Robert said softly but firmly, is to speak up when something's harmful, intentionally or not. The audience oohed. The tension pulsed like electricity. The silence backstage after the commercial break felt heavier than anything Joy Behar had experienced in her years on television. The moment the show cut to a pre-taped segment, producers rushed onto the stage like firefighters arriving at a smoldering disaster. The audience was murmuring, whispering excitedly about what they'd just witnessed, but all Joy heard was the dull, throbbing beat of her own pulse as she stormed toward the dressing room hallway. Her heels clicked sharply on the linoleum floor, each step punctuated with a fury she was barely containing. Behind her, Sunny hurried after her, calling her name, but Joy didn't stop. She could feel the heat in her cheeks, the way her jaw kept tightening and releasing. She reached her dressing room door and pushed it open with more force than necessary. Inside, the familiar space, flowers from fans, framed show photos, a small mirror surrounded by warm lights, felt suddenly claustrophobic. Joy stood in the middle of the room, breathing hard, trying to swallow the anger threatening to spill out of her. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so publicly humiliated. Lectured, cornered. A soft knock sounded on the door. It opened before she could answer. Joy, Whoopi said gently, stepping inside. We need to talk. I don't want to talk, Joy snapped without turning around. I want to cool down. Whoopi approached her slowly, like someone inching toward a wounded animal. It's not about you cooling down. It's about the show. The producers are losing their minds out there. Oh, the producers. Joy turned sharply, eyes blazing. Maybe they should have told me little Robbie Irwin was coming in hot with a moral crusade. Joy. Whoopi's voice was steady but firm. He wasn't attacking you. He wasn't. Joy laughed. Short, sharp, humorless. Did you not hear the same thing I heard? He came at me on live television like I personally went to Australia and burned down the Irwin sanctuary. He was defending his family's work, Whoopi said. You know how he is. He's passionate. He's earnest. Joy scoffed. He's sanctimonious. Whoopi sighed, rubbing her temples. Look, you're not wrong to feel blindsided. But storming off the set, that's going to be a headline. A big one. Joy bristled. I didn't storm off. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. Too late, Whoopi mumbled. Joy stiffened. Excuse me. Whoopi hesitated. The hot mic picked up your last line. The bit about him being a zookeeper. The internet is already running with clips. Joy's stomach dropped. You're kidding. I wish I was. Joy slumped into her chair, burying her face in her hands. This was the price of live TV. Every eye roll, every muttered word, every breath could be captured, clipped, and broadcast to millions within seconds. Before she could respond, another knock came. This time, a young producer poked her head in, clearly terrified. Joy, Robert wants to speak with you before the next segment. Joy's head snapped up. Absolutely not. He's really insisting, the producer added. And for what it's worth, he doesn't seem angry. Joy clenched her jaw. Of course he doesn't. He delivered his little sermon, scored his social media points. Why would he be angry? The producer fled as quickly as she arrived. A minute later, Robert Irwin himself appeared in the doorway. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry, either. He just looked earnest, determined, painfully sincere. Joy let out a long breath. This should be good. Robert stepped inside, hands clasped awkwardly. Joy, can we talk? Please. Whoopi gave Joy a look. Be civil, before slipping out to give them privacy. Robert took a hesitant step closer. I didn't mean to upset you. Truly. I really care about this stuff. And I know you do too. I thought if we talked about it directly. You blindsided me, Robert, Joy cut in, voice low but sharp. You didn't come here for an interview. You came here to correct me. Live, on camera. Robert's face fell. I wasn't trying to embarrass you. But you did, Joy said. You walked onto my show and made me look like I don't care about the environment. Like I'm some heartless cynic who hates animals. Robert shook his head vigorously. I never said that, I just... Look, words stick with people. When someone hears you, a respected TV host, say conservation is gimmicky or performative. I never said it about your family. Joy shot back, but people heard it that way, Robert said quietly. The silence that followed was long and heavy. Joy rubbed her forehead. Look, kid, Robert winced. Joy stopped, correcting